There are some whores in this house.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I am your host, Jeff Waldorf. Wow. Okay, so we got a pretty good show for you guys today. We're going to, of course, talk about how Donald Trump Jr. Eric Trump, they're kind of interchangeable at this point, at least according to me. We have Eric Trump conflating the stock market with, of course, the real economy. So that's dumb. Not at all true. The stock market is part of the economy, but it's not the whole economy. So if the stock market does good, it doesn't mean everyone else does. So it's one of those things. So we'll talk about that, and I'll explain. We also have William Barr defending Donald Trump, of course, on his call to have people in North Carolina vote twice. Fun. Then we've got ex-Trump supporters on CNN. That's a fun story. We'll get some serious stuff in. Of course, Edward Snowden. His revelations are in the news. And so very interesting. We've got another case to pardon Snowden. And then we've got, of course, more video of black people being killed by cops. So fun times as always. All right. So thank you, Rogue Jedi, for becoming a member. Dango Bangle, contact lenses. I can't put things in my eyes. Sorry. Things do not go in my eyes. I broke my glasses earlier today, so that's why we're a little late on the stream today. Or I should say really, really, really late on the stream. I had to go get them replaced. So, yeah. But hey, they look pretty good. So, could not get them fixed. Had to get them absolutely replaced. And so, there's that. All right. That said, let's dive into the show because we're already running way behind. All right. Here we go. The answer to that question, of course, is no. There is no smart Trump. All right. One of Donald Trump's sons, Eric, once again conflated the overall economy with the stock market. So now, this is President Donald Trump's son, Eric. On Wednesday, he decided to boast about the Dow Jones stock market. As I said, he said, "The Dow's on fire. You know the radical left is melting down as we speak, knowing that our economy is roaring back to life. USA, USA, USA." Well, for one, the economy is coming back. That's great. As a leftist, I think it's good when the economy does better. I don't know where they get this idea like that we're rooting for the economy to do poorly, especially since our positions are, hey, we want an economy that serves everyone. And so we like it when people do better. Look, I don't care if rich people do better as long as everybody else does better too. Historically, of course, unfortunately, that's not been the case, especially under the Trump administration, but also, of course, during the Obama administration, the Clinton administration, and basically most presidencies since Ronald Reagan, the working class has been getting shafted. And so I actually do care about that. That said, here we go again with people conflating the stock market, or at least one index in the stock market, to the rest of the economy. Look, here's the thing: a large chunk of the American people do not have stock. They don't own stock, and the regular working class people that do so as a result of mostly 401k retirement plans. And if you were lucky enough to have that retirement plan, well then, okay, this is great news for you, right? Congratulations. But half of all working Americans do not have one of those. And the other problem, of course, is that we have millions of people out of work, over 40 million people that are out of work now. A million every month have filed for unemployment. And so that's disastrous. It's all as a result of the coronavirus. And so you have the fact that Congress has not extended that $600 a week unemployment benefit that has exacerbated this problem. Okay, so a lot of problems here. Okay, in fact, recently I did a story where I referenced a Morning Consult poll, and that poll found that the share of unemployed workers that are unable to cover their basic expenses with unemployment benefits, right, rose to 50% in August. That's an estimated 8.3 million Americans that cannot pay their bills. They can't do it. They can't do it. Additionally, again, 40 million Americans are facing possible eviction. And you've got people that are being evicted as we speak, since there are no longer rental protections. Okay. And yet here's Eric Trump, heir to, the golden toilet man himself. Okay. Bragging about the stock market. And look, I don't know if Donald Trump has a golden toilet. That wouldn't surprise me. Okay. Look, to be fair, I guess it makes sense that Eric Trump is bragging about that. Why? He and his family probably have investments in the stock market. Of course, right? No doubt. So he'll be like, hey, look at that. I'm getting richer. How could you not like that? Well, if you're not sharing in that wealth, well then, yeah, you're not going to like it. I'm just saying. Okay. And look, by the way, the stock market, the gains from the stock market are artificial anyway. I mean, yeah, of course the stock market's going to do better when the Fed pumps trillions of dollars into it in economic stabilization aid. Yeah, they're going to do better, of course. But, well, how is the rest of the country going to do better? It's not. It's not, because the stock market is pretty much divorced from the rest of the economy. When, in the real economy, businesses are closing, people are going hungry, people are going to food banks, they're stretched to their limit, they're losing their homes, jobs are, small businesses are shutting down, they're not bouncing back, even in cases, or I should say in places where it's open, completely and utterly divorced. Okay, there's no correlation here. Okay, and so, but he's gonna, like an idiot, continue to go, oh, stock market, oh, wonderful stock market, doing great. Over 80,000 small businesses from March to the end of July closed their doors for good. Those businesses are not coming back. The jobs are not coming back. Okay. All while billionaires, by the way, saw a big increase. For example, Sheldon Adelson saw his wealth increase by $5 billion during the pandemic. Elon Musk saw an increase of $17.2 billion. Jeff Bezos increased his wealth by $48 billion. In total, in the United States, billionaires have increased their total net worth by $637 billion just during the pandemic. That is enough, by the way, to easily pay for college for every person in this country that wants to go to school. Debt-free college. I'm just saying, if you're already rich, if you have stock, then you're doing great. If you're a regular working class person, chances are you are not doing great. And not only that, but people in upper middle class are also doing pretty good too. And so they're not feeling the pain of regular everyday Americans. And so only a couple of kinds of people will crow about the stock market. And that's, of course, people who don't know how it works, or are duped into thinking that billionaires becoming richer somehow helps them, or the people who are already billionaires or alleged billionaires in the case of Eric and Donald Trump. And so this, of course, conflation that keeps happening over and over again is pissing people off. A lot of outrage online. For example, one person says, do you really think Americans care about the Dow? They care about feeding their families and having a roof over their heads, which again is not happening in this country. People are losing all of those things. Another person says, PSA, the stock market is not the economy. Another person says, tone deaf as usual. Stock market doing well. What does that tell you? It tells you the wealthy have been able to scoop up cheap stocks. Over 57 million people have filed for unemployment since March. Over 1 million people filed last week. Only your pants are on fire. Another person says, once again, Eric, please take an economics course or at least get the basics. The stock market is only one part of measuring the economy. Note our horrible unemployment rate and ballooning deficit, just to name a few. So I like how some people bring up the deficit, right? Because of this point. That deficit is already going to be weaponized, used as a way to, of course, try to prevent any incoming Democratic administration from actually properly doing what we need to do to not only support people as we deal with COVID, right? But also progressive policy. It's a break, right? They're going to use that as a way to basically stop anything positive from happening. And the irony about that, of course, is that most of that money that has gone to the deficit, okay? Well, I should say most of that money that makes up the deficit has gone to corporations, big businesses, banks. And so it didn't go to us. No, we got a $600 a month benefit if you're unemployed on top of, the state benefits and a $1,200 check. Very, very tiny amount of the CARES Act. Very, very tiny amount of the HEROES Act. And by the way, not even a part of the Republican skinny bill. So all that money goes to corporations, not to us. And yet they're going to use that and say, look at that. We already gave all the money to the rich. And so we've got nothing left for healthcare. Oh, man. That sucks. Austerity. You know it's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. Because that's what always happens. Another person says, oh, look, the graph of rich people's feelings is trending upward as poor people face pandemic death, mass unemployment, and evictions. Seems about right, unfortunately. And then finally, wow, Eric, I thought you were smarter than that. Oh, well, that's your first mistake. Then points out, stock market's not the economy. We have millions of Americans that are looking at being evicted for being behind in rent. Food banks have lines that stretch for miles to try to get food to feed their families, and on and on. And again, here's the thing. Eric and Donald and Don Jr., they're never going to meet, Mitch McConnell, right? They're never going to understand us. I mean, the Trumps were born with little, almost literal silver spoons in their mouths, right? Or in Donald's case, a golden one, right? And so they've never had to face poverty like the rest of us. They never had to struggle like the rest of us have. And they can't identify with us. And they don't care about us. They don't want to. In reality, this is just another long con that they're using to try to continue to keep power in November so that they can loot the treasury for themselves and their rich buddies. That's all it really has ever been about. Okay. I mean, in case you didn't know, now you do. Moving on. Let's go to William Barr. There we go. Attorney General William Barr is playing dumb about voter fraud in order to help Donald Trump. Take a look.
It sounds like he's encouraging people to break the law and try to vote twice.
Well, I don't know exactly what he was saying, but it seems to me what he's saying is he's trying to make the point that the ability to monitor this system is not good. And if it was so good, if you tried to vote a second time, you would be caught if you voted in person.
That would be illegal if they did that. If somebody mailed in a ballot and then actually showed up to vote in person, that would be illegal.
I don't know what the law in the particular state says.
You can't vote twice.
Well, I don't know what the law in the particular state says and when that vote becomes final.
Is there any state that says you can vote twice?
Well, there's some, maybe that you can change your vote up to a particular time. I don't know what the law is, so I'm not going to offer.
He was saying test the
Well,
system.
if you know what he's saying, why are you asking me what he's saying?
He doesn't believe in the mail-in voting. You're the Attorney General of the United States.
Why does you? Yeah.
All right, so look how dismissive he was in that entire thing. Well, man, if you already know, why are you asking me? Because you're the Attorney General of the United States. I mean, you should know the answer. You should know whether or not it is illegal for you to vote twice. And it is. Guess what? It is illegal. You can't do that. Doesn't matter the state. In North Carolina, they don't have laws where you say, well, I guess you can maybe vote twice. That's a pretty simple answer. But as you noticed, he can't answer it because he can't answer it. That would mean going against Donald Trump. And so, again, this comes from Donald Trump in North Carolina, basically encouraging people to vote twice to, quote unquote, test the system. Test the system, right? Do we got to test the system? If it's good, then it will catch it. Well, okay, but if it doesn't catch it, oh, look, extra votes going to Donald Trump. Weird. But if they do catch them, which is far more likely as voter fraud is actually incredibly rare, and there are protections built into the system, well, then, hey, you told people to do it. And since you did, there's going to be even more scrutiny, right, of these votes. Well, then they're going to get caught and you're going to end up having to prosecute your own supporters for voter fraud, which is ironic. Or, of course, you can just be like, pardon, you're all pardoned. I can do that. Oh, okay. Great. That's fun. So, look, do I think he's willing to sacrifice his own supporters to make a point? Yep. And I'm pretty sure some of those supporters would be happy to go to prison for Donald Trump. Because, it is. As long as it means that they can do harsher voter ID laws. I mean, look, the whole purpose, of course, when it comes to Republicans is to make voting harder so that you have lower turnout and Republicans win more. That's the whole point. And, of course, it coincides with Donald Trump's desire to win. Well, of course, you want to win, right? But he wants to win using whatever means possible. Okay, whatever means necessary, he will use in order to win the election. Cheat, right? As for, of course, William Barr, he's a simp. He's a lackey for the administration. He's got one job, help Donald Trump, because it helps him stay in power. He's the top cop in the nation, okay? And that's a lot of power in his hands. And people want to use and keep that power, okay? So now, as Pramila Jayapal points out, she's a progressive from Washington. She says, Barr once again made clear today that he is not serving as the Attorney General for the American people. He's serving as the personal henchman for Donald Trump. Now, where are the Republicans, right? Where are the Republicans on this? Well, they're going to go along with it. Why? Because, well, that's always been their position. I mean, They don't want black people. They don't want poor people. They don't want students. And they don't want people who are not Republican to vote. And they admitted it. They've said it so many times out in the open. Look, I go back to the 80s, Paul Weyrich, right? Godfather of the modern conservative movement. He said, we don't want everybody to vote. Our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down. And that's why he says we don't want people to vote. We want less people to vote. And so that's why they suppress. That's why they gerrymander. That's why they push voter ID. They rail against mail-in ballots, which, by the way, some states have done for decades with very little fraud. And they do everything to depress turnout because they can't win when more people vote. But look, even though that has been the Republican position for a long time, I've never seen a president go out and openly tell his followers in the state to vote twice. I know. No, just it's to test the system. I got to test the system. Right. Sure. That's exactly what you're saying. No. I've seen Republicans attempt to rig the votes, of course, but never so openly and brazenly as the Attorney General. And yet he's going to play dumb. And this is a corrupt administration. If we were a small country in the Middle East right now, and we were sitting on a bunch of oil, we'd be in the process of being liberated by ourselves because of the very clear corruption in our government that they could use as an excuse. Now, I guess thankfully we're not in that situation. So we still have the option of being able to vote out that corruption as much as we can. Obviously, I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I think we're going to vote out one type of corruption for a different type of corruption. But it's at least a little bit less and a lot less open. And we can fight it better, I believe, in a Biden administration than we can with Donald Trump, who doesn't all seem swayed by public pressure. And he's just there to fight to fight against efforts to stop corruption and to continue his own personal corruption. Whereas I think Biden is more systemic and more, normalized corruption in the way of most presidencies. So, all right. Anyway, let's go on here. Let's hit the next story. Elwell says an Iowa woman charged with voting fraud, voting twice for Donald Trump last fall, pleaded guilty to election misconduct. Shocker. All right. Three former Trump supporters told CNN that they were no longer willing to vote for Trump, and they explained why. Take a look.
I voted for him in 2016 because he wasn't a normal politician. I have to admit, I didn't pay too much attention until the pandemic started. The pandemic was when my eyes began to open. And June 1st, when he said U.S. troops on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square, that was my cross the line moment.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel now about your 2016 vote for him?
I think it's one of, if not the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I feel like voting for him helped kill over 100,000 Americans.
So, Jessica, what do you think of the president's response to COVID?
It's been abysmal. He's disappointed and abandoned the American people. My defining moment is when he said he takes no responsibility. Buck stops with you. You took the job, do the job.
for me, it started almost immediately from day one when he lied about how big the crowd was at his inauguration. And I have tracked him since then, and he lies every day to us. I don't know. The one thing he has told the truth about, he has not taken 1 ounce of responsibility for COVID.
All right, so, oof. Good example of why Donald Trump wants to talk about violence in Portland and Kenosha, because he's lost people on COVID. And to be fair, that first lady definitely lost her on the beginning of the Black Lives Matter protests. And so that's interesting stuff. I'm glad you guys also noticed the lady on the top right. Like, she's literally sitting in a Donald Trump shrine. I've never seen, and it kind of makes me think, right, that like, this is, I should say, it reminds me of the fact that this really, for a lot of people, is just a cult of personality. Donald Trump support. I don't know if they could, I don't know if she could name any specific policy that she come up with. She would just, and she does later on, kind of rattle off some stuff like, well, I saw on Facebook, and then the CDC report, and then, of course, goes into pro-Republican spin. Man. All right. So anyway, so now going back to COVID, right? So that's a significant crack in support, okay? According to a recent ABC News Ipsos poll, 63% of Americans disapprove of Trump's oversight of the public health crisis. So he's lost people on corona, as I said. Approval of his leadership on COVID-19 continues to hover in the low to mid 30s. So that panel, by the way, evenly split, half and half. Okay, the bottom, people who voted for Trump in 2016 will not vote for him again. And then the people on the top, again, pro-Trump vote. So, all right, as for the protests, so that's important because Lafayette Square was brought out, right? It turns out most Americans view the incident with Jacob Blake, which has left him paralyzed from the waist down, as a sign of broader problems in the treatment of African Americans by police. 74%, by the way, view an incident of the killing of George Floyd in the same way. So Jacob Blake, look, they've actually lost 12 points, which is interesting because Jacob Blake seems a lot more, egregious, shooting a man 7 times in the back for basically no reason. Oh, you don't understand, he had a knife in his car. So does like 90% of Americans that live in the country. But you won't see them get shot in the back 7 times. Come on. But again, there's another reason for that. The Republican propaganda machine has been working overtime to try to get people to see, oh, we're digging up all this information on Jacob Blake, that he's a bad person. Doesn't matter what you do in your past. Doesn't matter what your supposed record is. The fact that, was he violent towards the police? No. He got shot in the back 7 freaking times by a police officer when he was not facing a police officer and not being an imminent threat. And so, I don't know. Still, majority of Americans say that is pretty problematic. We might want to do something about that. Now, Trump and Republicans, as I said, they have been really hammering these protests as, being nothing more than riots and looting, conflating peaceful protest with that, of course. And again, they went into Blake's Pass, as I explained, which is, again, has nothing to do with the fact that he was shot 7 times. And I can't stress that enough. Cops are not supposed to be judge, jury, and attempted executioner. And I really do think that they were trying to kill Blake, and they have failed. I took a law enforcement class in college. You guys, a lot of you didn't know this. And so I took this, it was actually in high school at a college campus, but it was headed up by an ex-state trooper, right? So I was told, we were all told in that class, that if you fire your service weapon, then first of all, your intent is to kill your target. You don't fire a weapon to wound. You fire a weapon to kill, okay? And consequently, that's also why many service weapons, that are used, their magazines are empty by the end. Because you were supposed to empty that magazine to neutralize that threat. The fact that Jacob Blake survived that is a minor miracle. despite, of course, being paralyzed as a result. There's more. I'm going to then go to the panelists talking more about this stuff, about, the RNC. And it's actually a really, really great question here. So let's take a look.
And I want to ask the bottom row who do not plan to vote for him again. Did the RNC, ladies, give you any second thoughts because you heard so many testimonials from people who supported President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Why
He's
not?
a sick man, and they are all, as long as you're a Republican and you go along with the party line, he's your best buddy. If you don't, you're a do-nothing Democrat.
I was a lifelong Republican, but the Republican Party no longer exists. It's Trumpism. I mean, when was the last time the Republican Party did not put out a platform? When was the last time any convention was held on government property?
I have a big following on Facebook and everything. I've got thousands of friends. I can tell you they're voting for Donald Trump. I literally do not know one person that voted for him in 2016 that's not going to vote for him again.
And I also have voted Republican far more often in my life than I voted Democrat. But I got to say, I don't know if I will ever vote for a Republican again. I am just sickened by the fact that they are not Republicans, they're Trumpers, period. We've lost the Republican Party. It's gone.
I mean, look, here's the thing. This is what the Republican Party is. Again, note the lady with the shrine. I mean, that's who the Republican Party has always been. Just the names change. Okay? And so, look, most of my lifetime, the Republican Party has been basically cults of personality. This is the logical conclusion of everything the Republicans have been working for. The mask has been ripped off, and the ugly face of who they are is exposed to the world. And look, Republicans have two choices, right? They can either pretend to ignore it or embrace it. Sorry, Lori. Republicans, it's what they've always been, right? And look, one lady is like, I didn't really pay attention to any of this, so I didn't really know. Okay, look, I don't really blame you for not knowing who they are. If you've never paid attention to politics, other than, oh, I just go and vote. I mean, I've met people who are like, I've asked them, okay, what, you're a Republican, right? Why are you a Republican? Oh, because my mom was a Republican. My dad was a Republican, and we've just always been Republicans. Okay, but do you know about any of their policies? Freedom? Unfortunately, that's too much of American politics. That's like, so those are like the normies, right? Those are the people that are not invested in this, that don't know policy, that don't follow the news every day. These are the people that, like, you can actually still reach. It's just, they have to be paying attention to do so. And Trump is one of the few times they've actually, like, gotten their attention because of how horrible he is. And so, again, this is who Republicans are. The masks are off. And, and here's the thing. That mask was developed by think tanks, focus groups, propaganda, constant, like, the right-wing takeover of talk radio, for example. Okay. And so they've spent a long time trying to cultivate this image. And people like Frank Luntz, for example, would also literally come up with code names to distract people from, bills that are generally pretty awful, terrible pieces of legislation, but are called things like the Freedom America and Apple Pie Act. And, you look into it and you're like, oh, yeah, apple pie, that was great. I love that. Freedom. Who doesn't like freedom, right? Well, that bill might stop LGBT people from getting health care, or, allows businesses to discriminate against them. So they do this on purpose because it's what they do. And they don't really have any set real policy. Okay. And so the reason that they don't have policies because they don't think anything is wrong with America other than liberals keep trying to push it forward, keep trying to do progress, and so now we got to push back on it. They're a reactionary party, as I've said before, for a long time, and their biggest problem is that they think that Ben Shapiro can't speak on a college campus. That's the biggest problem facing America right now. And of course, their fix for everything else is let's just give more tax cuts to the rich, more money for the rich. So, but anyway, look, the other thing that I find interesting about this, right, is that she says, well, we lost our the Republican Party to Donald Trump. They're Trumpers now. Well, you know what that means. I mean, other than the obvious stuff that I stated, that's always been the Republican Party basically looking for a daddy since Ronald Reagan was also an actor. But now, in the context of today, they're trying to take over the Democratic Party, and they're actually having a lot of success. That is, I believe, the ultimate goal of the Lincoln Project. Get resistance lib money, and then use it to take over the Democrats and to leave left-leaning people out without a home. Okay. Now, that's a longer discussion, but I think that's true in general. As you've seen, Biden is much more conciliatory to conservative right-wing positions, not only because he is more conservative, right? Probably the most conservative Democratic candidate to come out of this cycle, I guess with the exception of Michael Bloomberg, but also he gets money. I'm sorry, he gets material support, which is like money, which is considered to be campaign money, from ads the Lincoln Project runs saying how bad Trump is. So he's getting this material support, this campaign support from these, Republicans, essentially former Bush era people. And well, he's going to pay that back, in which he doesn't get that kind of support from Bernie Sanders or the progressive left. Because we criticize him because he's not progressive. And so there's that. But anyway, that's, again, a longer discussion. Okay. But here we have an example of white Republican women, right? The suburban Republican base. Some of them are leaving. So there's a crack in that foundation. Now, just in case you think that maybe that's got Biden in the bag, because I see this all the time, right? So Politico came out with a poll recently, right? And the headline is, Donald Trump losing big to Biden. He's going to lose big. And you've got all those election, prognosticators that are like, oh, man, Donald Trump's going to lose big time. Joe Biden, he's got it. No. Look, I don't believe that at all. I think it's going to be a really, really close race. It's going to be too tight for comfort. Okay. But nonetheless, right, you have suburban white Republican women have been, leaving Donald Trump and going to Biden, but on the inverse as well. And you can look at polls about this. The more he loses white women, the more he gets suburban white men to fill in the gap. And so, not in the bag for Biden. Not in the bag for Biden. There's a lot to be worried about. Again, the rest of the panel, those women, you could see that very firmly pro-Trump, and as are a vast majority of Republicans. That's over 80% of Republicans have a favorable view of Donald Trump. And there's one more thing too, right, that should be mentioned. There are people who are publicly like, oh yeah, Trump, terrible. Oof. Oh man, never vote for that guy. But as soon as they get in the voting booth, they'll pull the lever for Trump anyway. I'm just saying. There are those people. And I think there were a lot of them in 2016. And I think there's still a lot of them in 2020. And so I just got to say, yeah, I love these stories of people having Trump regrets, right? Because I love when people see that, yeah, this guy does lie to you constantly. It makes you think that some people are actually listening when you talk about who this guy is. But at the same time, the moral of the story is take nothing for granted. We cannot let 2016 happen all over again. All right. Let's move on here. Let's go to some good news. All right. There's been a recent victory for privacy advocates and for whistleblowers. The Associated Press is reporting that 7 years after former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden blew the whistle on mass surveillance, an appeals court has found that the program that he had uncovered is unlawful and that the people who were defending it in U.S. intelligence agencies were found to be to have lied to the American people. So again, this is great news. On Wednesday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit said the warrantless telephone dragnet that secretly collected millions of Americans' telephone records violated the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and also may be unconstitutional. So top intelligence officials had publicly insisted that the NSA never knowingly collected information on Americans. Remember, of course, that was James Clapper during the Obama administration, literally lying to the public about it. Oh no, we never knowingly collect people's metadata and hoover it up. No, not at all. No, it turns out they absolutely did. After the program's exposure, by the way, they fell back and they said, well, yes, we were hoovering up your data, but we were using it to fight domestic extremism. Oh, really? Well, can they point to really any case that they used their unprecedented spying powers in order to stop a crime? To stop a domestic incident? No, they can't. I mean, they never stopped Dylan Roof, right? He's a terrorist. They never stopped the Aurora shooter, terrorist. They never stopped a lot of these terror attacks. For example, sovereign citizens, right-wingers, right? Never seem to stop them, ever. And so, I mean, what argument did they have? Well, it's the same argument that, by the way, people in New York City, Muslims in New York City, by the way, had this used against them. They said, "Oh, yeah, we need to monitor these Muslims to make sure that they didn't do crimes, to make sure that they're not extremists." Same argument, right? So now, I asked if they have one example. They actually do, kind of. They cited a case of 4 San Diego residents who were accused of providing aid to religious fanatics in Somalia. So now U.S. officials insisted for Basali Saeed Molan, Ahmed Nasir Talil, Muhammad, and Issa Dore were convicted in 2013 thanks to NSA's record spying. But the Ninth Circuit ruled on Wednesday that the claims were, quote, inconsistent with the contents of the classified record. So that metadata that was sucked up by the NSA, this unprecedented spying program, didn't actually go and help for the conviction of these 4 individuals. Now, the court case wasn't dropped, of course. They had other evidence that was that the court found had not tainted that, right? The ruling would not affect the convictions of Marlin and his fellow defendants. The court ruled that illegal surveillance did not taint the evidence introduced at their trial, but also said that the evidence really didn't, the illegal surveillance did not help their case either. And so at the same time, right, big deal, especially for privacy advocates. In fact, the ACLU said in a statement, quote, "Today's ruling is a victory for our privacy rights. It makes plain that the NSA's bulk collection of Americans' phone records violated the Constitution. And look, Snowden himself was incredibly pleased to hear this. And I'll give you the quote on that later. But here's the thing. Snowden, had he not fled to Russia, would have probably died here in American prison over this, over exposing this. Okay? Or at least have been treated like Chelsea Manning when she was in prison. Tortured, probably repeatedly. And look, Chelsea Manning was tortured repeatedly and had several suicide attempts as a result of that. And so we look at how they treated Chelsea Manning, who, gave up information that was, I think, in the public good. The collateral murder video that showed us doing war crimes in Iraq. And then, obviously, Edward Snowden also gave information that was in the public good, the fact that the American people were being spied on, right? And in giving up that information, he also gave up his entire life. I mean, he had a nice life. He had a great job, good salary, a great relationship, citizenship of this country. He had to flee to another country, and no other country would take him other than Russia. And so he did all that to let everybody know that the government was spying on us in what is now an unconstitutional way, or what has been found to it. So he reacted to this, and he said, "I never imagined that I would live to see our courts condemn the NSA's activities as unlawful, and in the same ruling, credit me for exposing them." Yeah. And so, look, I think it's beyond time. We should be able to bring Edward Snowden home. We should pardon the guy. It's time for a pardon. Okay. Look, intelligence lied to our faces. They took our private data, and yet it's the man who exposed it that is called a traitor to this country. I mean, wait. So, in part of their argument is, look, you shouldn't expose that data to the enemy, right? Or that the existence of this program to the enemy. Well, wait a minute. In this case, it's the American people who had a right to know the government was spying on them, and so they could stop the government from spying on them. So in that case, are we the enemy? Is the American people considered the enemy by the government? I mean, who did they believe was the enemy, right? No, there was no reason to have this program, and there's no reason to go after the whistleblower that released this program. Again, he would have had to flee to Russia had the Obama administration not cracked down on whistleblowers and thrown them in prison. And yes, I am glad that Obama pardoned Chelsea Manning, but he couldn't extend that same courtesy to Edward Snowden. Yeah, it's because it's an embarrassment to the administration. Because again, that was happening under Obama, and so look. He's been gone long enough, all right? Pardon Edward Snowden. Just let him come back home, pardon him, and dismantle those spying agencies. All right. Anyway, let's move on. Last story here for you guys. It's a good example of why we should defund the police. New video has been uncovered by, let me start that again. New video has been uncovered in a case of a family who had, okay, yeah, I apparently can't do intros today. So let's start this again. In the wake of Black Lives Matter protests in both Kenosha and Portland, video uncovered in New York City by the family of a man who was killed by police in New York City earlier this year has invited new scrutiny of the NYPD. So now there was a mentally distressed man who was possibly intoxicated, who died following police intervention. And so the Associated Press is reporting that the man Daniel Prude had died on March 30th after he was taken off life support 7 days after an encounter with police in Rochester, New York. So police body cam shows Prude agitated but otherwise unarmed and suffering what appears to be maybe a drug-induced mental episode. Getting what is called a spit hood put over his head, and then a police officer shoving him into the ground and then kneeling on his back as he whimpers. And so I'm going to warn you guys, this video is pretty disturbing to watch. Nonetheless, I think it's important so that we can see what happened.
Now give me the mace. Give me the mace. Give me the mace. On my mama blood, they flipping over in her grave. I mean that. Look, get the fuck up. Give me that gun.
Are you on 5?
Give me that gun. Give me that gun, not me. All right. Take this shit off my gun, not me. All right. Take this shit off my face.
No, I got it. I'm already in it.
Tried to kill me. And Jesus came out of me. My mama flipping over like grave, man. No God. I mean it. Get that shit out my face, man. I got shit.
Stop. Calm down. Stop. Calm down. Calm down, okay?
I mean, get that shit out of me. Get that fool. Get the fuck out.
All right, so look, that's tough to watch. So the guy's got some issues, right? So he's probably on something, but at the same time, he didn't do anything dangerous, right? They put a hood on him, and that apparently led to asphyxiation, along with, of course, getting his head shoved into the pavement, and then being kneeled on for at least 2 minutes. So they kneeled on him. You could hear him whimpering. I mean, again, it's incredibly upsetting to watch. But then he stopped moving and started drooling. The officers then removed the hood and the handcuffs, and medics had performed CPR on him. I guess they managed to stabilize his position or his condition somewhat. But then later on, he went to the hospital, died 7 days later. So a medical examiner concluded that Prude's death was a homicide caused by complications of asphyxia in the setting of a physical restraint. And so that, of course, he was being restrained by the officer, and it led to reduced airflow that led to brain damage. And so now, interestingly enough, this report also lists something called excited delirium and acute intoxication by PCP as contributing factors. And so, look, yeah, he was on something. It's very clear that he was in some sort of mental distress, or, or as well as having mental distress, as well as being on drugs. But at the same time, right? What is this excited delirium? Well, turns out excited delirium is not a real thing. Okay, it's made up. It's not a real condition that's recognized. Now, that said, it gets cited in a lot of police encounters. So let me read it, right? So it's described, excited delirium. It's described as a combination of psychomotor agitation, delirium, and sweating. It may include attempts at violence, unexpected strength, and very high body temperature. So now, look, the guy was obviously naked, right? You could see that from the video. So they can say, well, look, excited delirium. Look at this guy. He had some agitation. Obviously, he had a bit delirious, and he had to have been really hot because he was naked, right? Okay, but here's what else it reads. It may include attempts at violence, unexpected strength, as I said, high blood pressure. Complications may include high blood potassium, which, by the way, too much potassium in the blood can be dangerous for your heart. Can cause heart attacks, and look at that. That might be a way to explain, I don't know, why sometimes police officers, I mean, it could be used to explain away why sometimes actions by police officers lead to cardiac arrest. So How convenient, right? But as I said before, it's not a real condition. Excited delirium is not recognized by the World Health Organization, the American Psychiatric Association, or the American Medical Association. And therefore, it is not listed as a medical condition in the DSM manual, the DSM-4. So it's not a real thing. And by the way, Elijah McClain, and this is also, this goes hand in hand with excited delirium, right? Because you have police officers that carry around, not police officers, you have police officers that call medical professionals, paramedics, and ask them to inject ketamine into people that they say are resisting that. Well, they've got excited delirium. That means that you need to inject them with ketamine. That's what happened to Elijah McClain. He died after being injected with ketamine. They said he had excited delirium. Okay. And cops are using that fake condition, I think, in an effort to be lazy, to avoid doing their jobs. I don't feel like restraining this guy. Just go and give him some something, some ketamine, right? Let's do that. Okay. But in this case, that's not what happened. I don't think he was injected with ketamine here because he was already on something. But again, that excited delirium claim just happened to have popped up again. And so I wanted to talk about that. And so, look, he was on something. He had some issues. He had some mental health issues. Rochester police officers actually took Prude into custody for a mental health evaluation around 7 p.m. on March 22nd for suicidal thoughts. That's about 8 hours before the encounter that led to his death. But his brother said he was only at the hospital for a couple of hours, according to the reports. And then his brother, Joe Prude, called 911 at about 3 a.m. to report that his brother was missing, that he had left the house. And so he called the police to try to help his brother because, hey, he's been having some suicidal thoughts. He's got some issues right here. And look, help him. Please help him, right? Now, his aunt, Latoria Moore, said he did have psychological problems, but generally had not been a danger to the community. And so that's the thing about mental health. I mean, 1 minute you might look okay, and the next minute you're not going to be okay. And so, and that's the thing, right? And unfortunately, undiagnosed mental health or even diagnosed mental health, but untreated mental health issues can lead to self-medication. And of course, if you self-medicate with PCP, you can have some severe episodes. And that, unfortunately, in this case, seemed to have led to an unfortunate interaction with police who don't know how to deal with this. Now, his aunt said that he was, quote, just a bright, loving person, just family-oriented, always there for us when we needed him, and he never hurt nor harmed anybody. And said of the situation, quote, I didn't know what was the situation, why he was going through what he was going through that night, but I know he didn't deserve to be killed by the police. I placed a phone call for my, and by the way, this is Joe Prude now. He said, quote, I placed a phone call for my brother to get help, not for my brother to get lynched. How did you see him and not directly say the man is defenseless, buck naked on the ground, he's cuffed up already. Come on, how many more brothers got to die for society to understand that this needs to stop? So, look, I feel like this is an example of cops being over their head, right? Defund the police and actually use that money to fund mental health. Again, the NYPD has larger funding than some small nations. Billions of dollars. You could take some of that money and put it into mental health care. That's it. I mean, look, the man needed help and the police were not equipped to give it. That kind of help. I mean, why do we even have police officers that are dealing with mental health issues anyway? They shouldn't be dealing with this at all because every time they do, we're sending police officers into situations they're not trained to handle. And in a lot of cases, somebody dies. Look, police officers are trained to subdue dangerous criminals, right? That's the whole point. They're not meant to subdue the mentally ill. Not somebody having a mental breakdown and then taking drugs, as Prude was probably in the process of having that mental breakdown and probably did the drugs as a result. They're not trained to render aid, okay? Because in a lot of cases, they don't render aid, all right? They're the wrong people to call. Joe Prude found that out when he called the police to try to get his brother some help. And so, look, cops, I've said this before, and this isn't a diss at cops, right? It's not a dig. It's simply what they're supposed to do. Cops are there to protect property. That's their whole point. That's the existence of the police. If your property's in danger, 911, call the cops. That's what they're there for. And they will protect the shit out of your property. And because that's what they're there for. But if you're worried about a mentally ill family member, if you want them to survive whatever they're going through, for the love of God, do not call the cops. Because more often than not, you're going to have stuff like this. You're going to have police officers that are poorly trained to deal with the mentally ill end up doing what they would to a criminal, subduing them in a way that does more harm than good. Okay, they make that situation worse. What we need to have are people that are trained specifically to respond to, mental health emergencies. Okay, that's not necessarily paramedics, because they deal with health emergencies, and definitely not cops who deal with property emergencies. Okay, and that's what that's about. This is why, cases like this back up the argument that we should defund the police. It doesn't mean not have police. It means restrict the police to their role of protecting property, because that's all that they're trained to do. Okay? You need to have a unit that is built to deal with mental illness, people that are suffering mental episodes. Okay? That unit needs to not be armed with guns. All right? That's the last thing that you should have to answer those emergencies. You need to have a group of people, and a department that is dedicated to protecting human life, to save lives, and to protect the people around as well that might not be knowing, might not know what's going on or how to help people that are in the middle of an episode. Okay? They need to deal with these people in a way that protects their lives. Police are not meant to do that. They are the wrong people to call. And so we actually need to defund and help create something new to deal with these emergencies. If you don't, we're going to continue to have these problems. And innocent people, and yes, Black people that can't afford to get mental health care, because for some reason in this country, we think healthcare, and mental health care is some sort of a luxury. This is going to keep happening. And so we have to do something. We have to, again, I think we need to have universal healthcare. And on top of it, an agency dedicated to dealing with people with mental illness in a way that helps save their lives and protects the people around them. And they have to not be able to use lethal force. That is the only way we're going to fix any of this, and to actually protect human lives. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Sorry again about the late show. If you're listening to this later on, then you weren't affected by it. But nonetheless, I do want to apologize to the stream. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate the super chats. And please like and share the stream. Help our GoFundMe campaign. So we actually just got a case for the new computer today. So it's an empty case so far. But we're going to fill it with some stuff to, help build a brand new, nice streaming computer to help me with editing. It's, editing, streaming, and work computer. So to help with the show. All right. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night around the nation.
Wet ass P-word.
I like my meat tight. Tighten up my meat.
There's some whores in this house.
Please clap.
Tolerate it.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.